that you're listening to truth or...
Especially not some duded up, egg-sucking gutter trash.
That's for the distance, baby.
Render you as criminal as I.
What do you think, Frank? I called...
Make a better choice. Ratings advice. Use it. It's on every video.
Hey there, it's us again. This is my brother Peter, mom and dad, and I'm Dasha. Today, we're going to be showing our friends Andrew and Lisa the
Basics of the internet.
So I get a lot of recommendations to cover movies on this channel, less so on YouTube and more on my TikTok where a higher portion of my audience is. I have quite a few movies on my watch list from recommendations, but a few weeks ago, one specifically caught my eye. A user commented that I should check out a movie called Charlotte's Net. Now, I'd never heard of this film before, but that's not exactly a bad sign considering I cover underground horror films. It had all the signs of an interesting cult film. It had a limited physical release, it was from an unknown director, and of course, I was told it was a pretty messed up movie. So, I decided to go out and get myself a copy. But I wasn't really prepared for what I was going to see. Once I watched it, it wasn't really what I expected. It was honestly a lot worse. To get right into it, this movie contains real footage from maybe a dozen or so gore and shock videos. Part of the intro credits state that the filmmakers consulted with a lawyer on using this footage, and supposedly it's all legal. And I mean, considering the fact that mixtapes and Mondo films like MD Pope and Faces of Death are a thing, it doesn't really set off any red flags for me. We're going to talk more about that later, but for now, I'll just summarize the plot. So, in the film, we follow two friends, Phil and James, that explore the dark web together for some pretty messed up videos. One day, while searching together, one of them seems to find something a little too messed up. Afterwards, James shows Phil his short film that he's been working on, and let's just say it's not a pleasant watch. Pissed about being persuaded to go into that rabbit hole and starring in James's disgusting short film, Phil kicks James out. Now, right off the bat, I can feel a lot of people rolling their eyes at the concept of this movie already, and those eye rolls are pretty justified in most cases. For whatever reason, the deep web or the dark web is a concept for many, many terrible horror films recently. And it's funny because it's so apparent that these scripts are written by people who have never ventured onto the deep web or the dark web and get their ideas of what the deep web is from creepy fake Reddit stories about red rooms and TikToks. But to this film's credit, it seems like the writer understands the deep web and shock sites way more than most other films about the subject do. Anyways, the next day the friends look over security camera footage of the last night and find a strange masked man stalking the boys outside Phil's home. And Phil seems to be the only one taking it seriously as James just kind of plays it off. So the two decide to go take Phil's dog for a walk, and we get a slight look into what Phil really saw last night that shook him up so much. It's pretty vague, but I'll let Phil himself explain it.
Come on, what did you actually fucking see?
Well, I thought it was something innocent though. It was a name. I think a girl's name. Charlotte, maybe? Or something? 2 words or something. Who fucking knows? I don't want to talk about it.
That night, they're watching the security camera footage again, and someone appears out of the alleyway and kidnaps Phil's dog. A chase ensues as they try to get the dog back, but the two stumble upon something much, much worse. They enter a seemingly rundown home and discover a chainsaw. As the two delve deeper into the abandoned house, a video plays from the closet of a puppy getting its head crushed by a woman in heels. The two, obviously freaked out, decide to leave, but as the two are leaving, another car is blocking their way home. In the trunk, a video of a man seemingly being torn apart plays, and a sign reads, "Your next scum cunt." Phil is then kidnapped, and now the two are completely separated, alone. James wakes up in another house, and well, one of the most genuinely scary things I've seen happens. On a CRT, we see a naked man in a mask with that chainsaw from earlier roaming a hallway. And you can probably guess which house he's in. The man chases James and he seems to get away, finding himself in a forest now. And Phil seems to be there too, gagged and bound. We jump forward in time a little bit to see Phil being executed on a TV. And after one final jump in time, James wakes up deep in a forest, no hope in sight. James is eventually hunted down, and a dog rips his genitals apart. And that's how the film ends. So from a horror perspective, discounting the gore we randomly see throughout the movie, the first 20 minutes or so of this movie are a little dull. We basically follow one character, James, bullying his friend. Now granted, I know kids exactly like this, so it's not exactly unrealistic, but man, you really start to feel bad for Phil. After that though, I did find a lot of the scare scenes to be pretty effective and tense. Most notable that earlier chainsaw scene. I mean, I have an appreciation for these guys producing some genuinely memorable and creepy moments on such a low budget. However, now I guess it's time to address the elephant in the room. So like I stated earlier, this movie contains real gore and shock videos. Now this is by no means the first film to ever do this, but this is the first film that I've seen that portrays what modern internet culture surrounding gore is really like. The director of the movie, James Dobbin Jones, actually gave an interview on the Overlook Hour podcast, and I'm going to use some clips from it so I don't misconstrue anything. And if you want to check out the podcast, I'll just link it down below in the description. So from my understanding, there was a point to using real gore outside of simple shock value. James seemed to want to show that these kind of gore videos are a form of entertainment nowadays. Here's him talking a bit about it on that podcast.
Cannibal Holocaust is a movie against exploitive film. And by creating that film, they made an exploitive film. And Diodato, who with whom I share a birthday, went to jail for making it. Cuties got a bunch of people to cancel Netflix for making a film about sexualizing young girls in Western culture, which, the film ultimately did in the end. Now, with your film, what was the message you were trying to get out?
So, practically that this is, this sort of stuff that you see is a form of entertainment on the internet. The message is just... this is what our generation sees as it's a form of entertainment.
Now, whether or not James meant to, he did expose an interesting subculture that began to rise with the age of the internet, and, at the risk of sounding pretentious, actually reminded me of how director Michael Haneke uses real violence in his films. Now stick with me here, I know I'm kind of reaching for a point. For reference, Michael Haneke, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is an Austrian director known for making films about sometimes taboo subjects and for using real footage of animal deaths in his films, most notably from the films that I've seen, Cachet and Benny's Video. Haneke uses this footage to blur the line between fiction and reality while trying to make a point on how violence in media can affect us as people. Now, by no means am I trying to say that's what Charlotte's Net is trying to do, but it does bring to light another side of that exact same thesis. Violence is used as entertainment. We can all pretty much agree on that. And with us being in the age of the internet, and also the age of gore, are we desensitized to it? It seems that a lot of the time we're sheltered from real-world violence. Most people can watch a movie about John Wick or any random horror movie that's violent, and we just accept that. Even in the news, at least in American culture, we're not really shocked by anything anymore. No one bats an eye to fictionalized or even real violence anymore. And news outlets and documentaries often sensationalize killers. I mean, you just have to look anywhere on serial killer TikTok or Tumblr and you can see plenty of people romanticizing serial killers and mass shooters, sometimes going further into obsession and even sexualizing these awful human beings. So at least in my analysis, I think this film brings up the question: how does our society view violence? Is that violence entertainment? And if so, why? Now again, I know I may be reaching here with a lot of this kind of analysis, but as I was watching this movie, these were the thoughts that were just kind of going through my head. I could be totally wrong about the statements about this movie, or there being a statement at all. But that's what I like about film so much, is analyzing it and taking meaning from it, even if it seems like it's kind of a bit of a stretch. Anyways, this film was definitely disturbing by all means. If any part of what I talked about sounded interesting to you and you want to check this film out, I'll leave a link down below to Toxic Film Productions' website where you can get a DVD copy. From what I understand right now, that's the only way to view the film. But like always, that's the way I recommend doing it because it directly supports the filmmakers. I'll also leave their social medias down below if you have any questions. And like always, this is Nightmare Movies, and I'll see you guys next time.